Howdy, y'all. What's going on? It's been a long time, but guess what? The Barons are back. Finally. The Barons are finally back after a long-awaited return of, what has it been? 2 months?
At least 2
months since we've been able to structure a schedule in which the Baron Banter and the Barons have returned. So thank you so much for returning to us as we have returned to you to bring you an hour's worth of content that is deliberately messed up in the head, that is undeliberately poorly developed, and is completely out of our hands at this point. Once things get rolling, you've listened to a Baron Banter before. You know how things snowball. So thank you so much for coming back and hanging out with us. As always, I am your host, Tyler Zulli, joined alongside me, my brother, my partner in crime, my co-host, the man that keeps me on my toes at all times, and if it weren't for him, I would be sane and coherent, Brandon Zulli.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be back.
It is great to be back, and while I can't say that this is going to be a surefire, hard-hitting episode simply because this idea came about last night. And this idea was, hey, you're off tomorrow, and I'm off tomorrow. Let's throw a Baron Banter together. Okay, what do you want to talk about?
I don't know.
We'll figure it out.
I'll Google News.
Yeah, we'll Google search something and see what happens. So it's not going to be this hard-hitting episode like the one we left you with the last time we did a Baron Banter that
isn't the one we
centered around Colin Kaepernick.
Oh, I thought the one we left them on was the Calendars in North Korea.
No, that was
the one before it?
That was the one prior. The last one we did was myself, you, and Devin. Kind of basically solely talking about the Colin Kaepernick situation.
Yeah, now I remember.
But we are 2 months prior. We are back. We are better than ever. The NFL is in its final 2 weeks of the season. 4 teams left. We'll get to some football talk later. But first thing we want to talk about, as we like to do normally, is discuss things that are happening in the world. And usually this is the part of the show where we kind of hit you with a hard-hitting political or hard-hitting news story of some kind.
Usually about Trump.
Usually it's about Donald Trump. But we didn't want to start with that today because there was something that really grabbed our attention in the news over the last 24 hours. Now, this hasn't happened over the last 24 hours, but we've seen it over the last 24 hours. And it really kind of grabbed our attention. And the headline, not from the BBC, coincidentally, but from ABC News, the headline is, California's couple, ordinary home, held torture chamber. And to really dive into the story, Brandon, I'm going to let you kind of take this one away.
So, I read through the article when I first saw this, and the basic gist of this is that a girl had escaped from her house, and she ran straight to the police. And when the police got there, all 12, besides her, of the children that this couple had were chained to furniture and appliances and things like that, and were so malnourished that they believed that the 17-year-old girl that ran to the police was a 10-year-old.
They thought she was 10.
She was so small and frail, they thought she was 10. She was 17 at the time. Jeez.
So let me ask you this. Before I read this story, I assumed that the basis of the story was the cops basically, one of those came knocking on the door and kicked down the door type deals. That's not necessarily what happened. But the first thought that came to my mind is, could you imagine being the cop that comes to the door? And you knock on the door, and one of the parents opens the door. And you say, well, there's been reports of mistreatment and child abuse. And you just see, as you peer through the crack in the door, because this is how I would imagine it. The dad opens the door about 3/8 of an inch. And you can, see his eyeball, and that's about it. You know, like in movies where they kind of just pick their head up.
Just like that.
Yeah, I could just see, half of his mullet and one eyeball. But then the officer is able to peer through and sees a child, shackled to a desk. There's been reports of That's a child chained to a desk. I'm going to need to come in.
Yes, he's in punish land.
Right. He's being punished by being shellacked to a desk.
Open the door, sir. I'm taking this child away.
All of your children.
And then he opens the door and he sees it's not one child, but 12 of them. 12 children.
12 children chained to desks and
they had
lamps and... Well, I guess being chained to a lamp wouldn't really do you any good, but...
They had 13 children, 12 chained up, and then the one that actually ended up getting away. All the children ranged from ages 2 to 29.
They had full-grown adults.
Yes.
Tied to
furniture and like a radiator, and I can't fathom what went through these people's minds to make them think that this was an okay thing to do.
How did this girl get out, is my question.
I don't think it says. I believe she slipped through her, like, restraints. Because she was so tiny. Like, she probably, like, popped her hand out of a shackle or something.
Right.
And basically, she ran straight to the police and with photos and things like that to get the police's attention. And eventually, the police came over and did kick down the door. And I believe, it says that both parents are jailed with a $9 million bail. So,
$9 million doesn't seem high enough.
No, it doesn't. But basically, thankfully, I don't think
should be a minimum of $1 million a child.
I think these people are never getting out of jail for the rest of their life.
Well, and here's the thing: you're going to have your day in court, and they are going to be charged with at least 12 counts of child abuse.
Mm-hmm. Child endangerment.
12 counts of imprisonment.
Mm-hmm.
Illegal imprisonment. Probably 12 counts of crimes against humanity or something.
They are being charged with torture and child endangerment.
There you go. There's torture.
Because it is torture that they...
I don't know what the guideline is for a torture ruling, but I'd have to think it's pretty steep.
Yes.
I would have to assume that it's pretty steep.
However, this is amazing. When the police were arresting them, both parents stated that they were perplexed why the police were there.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why I'm being arrested. All I did was chain my kids up to the bed and not feed them at all any day. So I'm just kind of curious as to why I'm being sent to jail. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I mean...
Something tells me they're from the South, even though they're in California.
Well, one look at this man, and I'll try and get this picture up. Cause
can't see his ears, but I bet you he's got low-set ears.
He looks like he's trying to eat your soul through the picture.
His eyes are about...
They're like all...
4 inches too close together, on 2 inches on either side.
And the one on the right seems to be a lot lower than the one on the left.
Yeah, they're not set properly. He has like a half mullet with...
He has like bangs.
So he's got like 3 different haircuts in one. He just went to the barber and he was like, "What you want?" And the barber, he went,
"Give me the guy from No Country for Old Men."
Just mess me up. Just totally mess me up. Make me look like I torture my children.
Now, it says thankfully that none of the children seem to have been sexually abused. Thankfully.
Oh, that's the silver lining of that.
Yes.
And they're all alive still?
Yes. I believe they're all still alive. They have been obviously taken away into Child Protective Services. And I'm trying to figure out why no one was called before this, because it says that not a single call to Child Protective Services or the police had been made up until this point.
How did they know? How would they have known?
Well, the children could have tried to do it.
If they're chained to tables, they're not really going anywhere.
True. But you would have to think, like a neighbor would have noticed that, hey, all 13
Where are your kids?
All 13 of those kids haven't left the house in a year or something. And they would have realized, hey, something's wrong. Yeah, all right.
Frustrating me with that.
Fine. Dude, it doesn't really matter at that point. But what I'm trying to find is I'm trying to find out how the girl escaped, And where did they get these shackles and restraints for
where do you
13
buy
kids?
where do you buy prison grade
was it
restraints?
Was it the metal classic chains? Or was it belts or something?
Well, and that's the thing. When I'm looking at it, it really could have been handcuffs.
Yeah.
But with the way that I'm picturing it in my mind, is
medieval
style shackles that are steel and you have to waddle when you walk.
Like the thing
we're making a joke out of a really bad situation, but that's what I'm picturing in my head.
Like the wood bar that you have to put both hands in your head through.
Like you've got the barracks or something. That's how I'm picturing this. Or these kids and young adults are being
like a shackle,
literally prisoners inside their own home.
Like a shackle around their ankle with the classic ball on it.
Exactly, and that's the issue that I keep coming back to is how were these kids? How do you get material and the equipment to chain children and young adults to beds and tables and desks without them getting out eventually? And again, I come back to how did the girl get out?
I'm trying to find that, but it doesn't exactly say. It just said she managed to escape her restraints.
Right, and they're not going to drop any names for these kids.
Oh, I don't believe they.
But my curiosity,
they name both the parents though.
Well, you have to. They're criminals.
Yes.
My curiosity piques as to the future of these 12 individuals. Because it's not going to be very bright.
No, but what's going to happen? Obviously, the younger children will be put into foster homes and adoption centers.
Right, but
what will
that's
happen to
29?
the adults? Yeah, will they just be put out into the street?
You're just going to become an adult?
Oh, here, go get a job now, kid. I was shackled to a desk for 12 years.
12 years.
Or something, I don't know how long. But what can happen to these children? They all need special help. They need... I don't even know if...
They're going to need psychiatrists, psychologists...
Did they get an education?
Therapists, teachers, doctors, lawyers, probably a priest. You're going to need a lot of help to get back into normal society. And I don't think that they're never going to be the same. I don't know if they've always been prisoners in their own home or whether this is a new thing.
Oh, I just read this.
Late breaking news.
State Department of Education records show the home's address is the same as the Sandcastle Day School, where the father is listed as principal. So basically, they registered their home as a school. How?
And then these children were
chained
imprisoned inside?
No state agency regulations or overseers private schools in California, and they're not licensed by the state educational department. Private school operators are required to file an... Can you spell that word right there?
It's an affidavit.
Affidavit with the state annually, listing the number of students, staff members, and information about the school's administrators. Private schools are also subject to an annual fire inspection. So
let me ask you this.
Did none of this happen?
What did they do? Did they... Either the inspections didn't happen, or for the one day that the fire marshal was showing up, these kids were allowed to be out of their chains.
Representatives for the State Department of Foresight and Fire Protection and the Riverside County Fire Department would not immediately say whether the Tupin's home was inspected.
So basically, they messed up too.
Yes. They
did not inspect the home. Here's the thing. Because if you had inspected the home and found that nothing was wrong, whether they threw the blanket over your eyes or not, and you inspected the home and it looked okay, you would come in and say, we inspected the home and it looked okay. Unless, here's the other thought, unless they went in and did inspect the home and found these kids shackled to walls and said nothing.
Were they bribed, maybe?
That's where it comes into play. Because there's one of maybe 4 outcomes that happened. A, they didn't do it, and that's why they're afraid to go and do it. B, they went and did it and found nothing wrong. And truly, ideally found nothing wrong and there was no issues because they threw the blanket over their eyes and whatever happened. At that point, you would not call for fault, right? You would say we went in, things looked okay, we inspected it, they passed, or they failed, and blah, blah, blah. Option 3, they went in, saw what was going on, and turned a blind eye to it. And if that's the case, they're just at fault. Mm-hmm. They're just as at fault.
They should get the same amount of prison time. And now, at the end of this article, it says that the recovery process, both physically and mentally, will be a long and arduous one.
Really?
I'm thinking, no, duh.
Really?
What else would it be? I wouldn't be surprised if any of these kids were messed up for the rest of their lives.
And I don't mean to make this as a joke, but statistically speaking, with 12 kids, 12 people in that home, one of them, statistically, will become their parents.
Yes.
Will become a killer.
Which is unfortunate.
It totally is unfortunate, but when you have that many people in a home chained up, statistically speaking, that's going to happen.
It's potentially not their fault because that's all they know at that point.
Well, sure, they're mentally not stable at that point.
Maybe like the younger kids, like I don't know the whole range of them, but like they said there's a 2-year-old there. They could be raised and then they could forget about all of this happening, and they won't have any memory of it. But the adults, the 29-year-olds, the teenagers, the 17-year-olds, they're going to have this for the rest of their lives.
The outliers are the bigger chance of being okay. Because like you said, the younger ones may be able to forget it. And if this wasn't going on their entire lives for the older ones, the 29-year-old, right? So let's say that this started at a particular age. Mm-hmm. That started when they were able to form their own ideas. Maybe they can revert back to a state where this didn't happen. Let's say they were 18 when this started, just making a number up. And for the last 11 years this happened.
They're going to block off their memories.
You could revert back to being 18. You're going to be a little bit socially behind because you act like an 18-year-old at 30. Mm-hmm. But you will be able to be conductive. You'll be able to be productive and conduct a normal life. It's the middle. It's the mean. Mm. The median of the people, of the kids inside, are the ones that I'm most concerned about. Any of them that are 4 or 5, mm-hmm. to let's say maybe 18. You're right. That's all they ever knew. That's all they may ever going to be known. All they're ever being. Wow. Let me try to say this grammatically correct.
We can't English.
That is good. All they're ever going to be able to know. Mm-hmm. Wow. You would think somebody with a journalism degree would be able to speak a little bit better, but
we would hope so. And a college education.
And a college education to boot.
A good college.
Well, you would think so. But you understand my point.
I understand your point.
Is that the middle ground is where I find the most concern.
Because they can't go either way.
Right.
They can't regress back, and they can't forget.
It's not a lie. It's going to be a long, arduous process. And like I said, they're going to need to see a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. And our thoughts and prayers are with them, and we hope that one day they can lead a normal life.
Well, and we'll keep you updated as the Baron Banter regains its old form as to what happens with these two horrendous human beings. And all I can say is I hope the criminal justice system does its job and does things particularly well, and these two never see the light of day again.
Let's hope so.
That's the hope. We're going to take a short commercial break. We'll get to a whole lot more on the other side. Thanks for hanging out with us on this first long segment back of Baron Banter. Got about another 30-40 minutes or so, depending on how long our segments will run. We'll be back with much more. This is Baron Banter. What's going on, y'all? Thanks so much for coming back and hanging out with us right here on Baron Banter. If you found us via our YouTube channel, well, welcome once again. Please, as Brandon likes to say, leave a like, comment, and a subscribe for all things
Earl.
Banter?
I guess this would be Banter.
All things Banter?
Baron?
All things Baron?
We are the Earls.
All things Earl.
Yeah, so all things Earl.
Alright, so all things Earl. But do me a favor, if you enjoy Baron Banter, also take a look at some of the other videos that are posted. Very almost to the point where it's daily now. Take a look at some of those videos, and just enjoy what you want to enjoy. A lot of good stuff, a lot of good content from some of these guys. I mean, well, I'm not normally on many of the other videos. I'll make a couple of guest appearances every now and then. So if you've come strictly to see me, you probably want to stay on Baron Banter. If you've come strictly to see Brandon, you get a lot of videos coming up in the next couple of days that you'll be able to.
I have been in every video this channel has ever posted.
Brandon's actually been in every video this channel has ever put out. So how many are we looking at now? It's got to be in the hundreds now.
I believe it's around 200, maybe 250.
200, 250? That's not bad
check
at
up
all.
right now.
All right, so we'll get those stats and we'll get things started once again. But anyway, if you found us on our YouTube channel, thanks so much. And leave a like, comment, and a subscribe. If you found us via Twitter, you can head on over to said YouTube channel and listen to us as well. I had an idea, and I forgot to bring it up to you before this show started, and I wanted to get your opinion and get the listeners' opinion as well. What do you think about going live for Baron
podcast?
Banter? Yeah, live for Baron Banter as well.
I'd be up for it.
Now, my only question is, when we go to break for the podcasted Baron Banter, how would we go to break on the live channel? Would you just have to cut the stream?
Well, if we cut the stream, we would have to
start a new broadcast.
Stream.
Right.
What we could do is we could webcam it. I could put the webcam up, and then I could go to a part of enter a part of a game or something, and then it would cut the webcam off. Mm-hmm. So we could step away for a minute and do something that we need to, and then come back 5 minutes later.
Okay. Now, would we be able to both record a podcast and do it live at the same time?
You mean on this and that?
Yes. So,
yes.
In terms of we go live on YouTube and we also do the normal Baron Banter podcast.
Yes.
Okay. So that's something to think about. Tell us what you guys think. If you'd like to see that, maybe get a live stream going so you don't have to wait around for Baron Banter to upload and you just want to watch it right away. It seems like Wednesdays, at least for the foreseeable future, are going to be the days in which we broadcast Baron Banter, and the video will be up on its normal Friday podcast. So if we can find a way to do that, you may get an exclusive live video 2 days prior to Baron Banter dropping. What do you think about that, Brandon?
I would be all down for it.
I like the idea, but let us know what you think. Leave a comment in the comment section and let us know if you'd be interested in a live stream, and we could get that started as well. But let's get back to Baron Banter. Like I said, we have some more stuff we'd like to talk about. Now, Brandon, I always preface a sports topic or a quasi-sports topic with this. This is going to be related to sports, but it's not going to be a sports conversation.
Okay.
Because you have a very well-rounded knowledge of a lot of things.
Now, I just checked our video.
Why don't you just keep cutting me off?
I apologize, but you asked for this statistic.
I know. Go ahead. Give us a number.
We were way off. We are at 405
Are
videos
you really?
posted.
That's unbelievable. Upwards of 400 videos from Easy Mode Earls.
Still only 24 subscribers.
That's okay. We'll get the number.
Actually, weren't we at 16 the other day?
I thought we were in the teens, so 24 is pretty cool.
Thank you all so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks very much. Especially if this is your first Baron Banter. Hopefully you enjoy it. But I always preface this by saying you have a very well-rounded knowledge of a lot of things. Mm-hmm. Sports is not one of them.
I know
you know the rules of sports.
I know the general rules of most sports ball games.
But you don't know the everyday lifestyle of sports and what's going on in today's sporting world.
I know most things that I see from you.
So you do know that...
I learned it by watching you, Tyler.
I'm always watching. Side note, by the way. I was driving home from work the other day. I got done work at... What time did I get done? I got done work earlier than normal. I usually work till about 10 o'clock. I usually work like a 2 to 10 shift. Mm-hmm. But I got done work earlier than normal the other day. And I was driving home. And on my way home is Brandon's place of work. And he's in there till about normally 10 as well. Mm-hmm. So I was driving home, and where Brandon works is right on the corner of a four-way intersection with a stoplight obviously on every part of the intersection. And I get stopped at the stoplight, probably about three cars in line, and I can peer right into the window of where Brandon works. And I texted Brandon really quickly, and all I said was, "I see you." And I saw Brandon go over to his phone from the desk and he typed me, "Where?" And
I started scanning
and
the
by the
restaurant.
time I had the chance to answer Brandon's text, I had already gone through the light and continued my way home. But I texted him when I got home and I said, "I was sitting at the light right in front of your work." And he said, "Suspicious." And my response to Brandon was, "I'm always watching." So just in case you're unaware, Brandon, I'm always watching.
Always watching, Wazowski.
Why is your paperwork late?
Why'd you turn her into a southern person?
My voice went to go that way, and I just went with it. I don't know why. I used to be able to do that voice so well, and I can't do it anymore.
Back on topic.
Back on topic. So anyway, we're going to make this short because I'm not giving that little caveat intro again. We're going to talk about something that's related to sports, but it's not fully sports related. And that something is the fact that the Eagles play in the NFC Championship game this Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings, one of 4 teams remaining, and a trip to the Super Bowl is on the line. Now, as you know, the Eagles have never won a Super Bowl.
Yes, I remember the little Venn diagram you showed.
Yes, and the Eagles are the only one in the middle.
Most obnoxious fans who are overly violent, teams who have never won a Super Bowl, and the only one in the center.
The Eagles are in the middle. However, the Eagles have never won a Super Bowl. And would you agree with me that Philadelphia is, at its core, an Eagles town?
Yes.
It supports all 4 of its teams. But if you went up to 100...
Except the Sixers.
No, the Sixers are huge anymore.
Really?
Yeah, they're getting good finally.
Well, the last time I heard...
Well, they were garbage for a long time.
The last time I heard about the Sixers, tickets were $5 for courtside seats.
You can get bring in a box of mac and cheese. That was actually a deal. Bring a box of mac and cheese and get a free ticket. However, if you were to poll 100 people and ask them, what's your favorite Philadelphia team? I would bet you at least 50% said the Eagles.
Most likely.
So, the Eagles are a huge deal. Now, my question is, should the Eagles advance to the Super Bowl, win this Sunday? And should they find themselves Super Bowl champions? This city is going to erupt.
It's going to explode.
It's going to explode in amongst itself.
So implode.
Implode, yes. It's going to implode. Now, I saw something the other day, and this kind of aids my point, and I'll ask you the question in just a second. Somebody tweeted and said, "This city is so starved for a Super Bowl. If the Eagles win, the skies are going to open up, and it's going to start raining cheesesteaks. People are going to be speaking in tongues. The ghost of Ben Franklin is going to drunkenly text Betsy Ross, 'Hey, you up?'"
All sentences will begin and or contain the word
Yo.
John.
Yo and John. But let me ask you this question, and I've always thought about this. Should the Eagles win the Super Bowl, what direction do you think this city takes? Do you think it takes like it's crazy, but everybody's super, super nice to each other and there's like no crime for like 3 days?
It's the reverse purge.
Or do you think people are going to start burning buildings to the ground? Because you know there's no in between. It's going to be one or the other. Which one do you think it is?
From as much as I've seen of people and when they win their favorite sports championship, I'm going to have to say that it's going to lean towards more burning cop cars.
That's what I was thinking too.
Because I think people are going to... If for some reason that they win, which they might, I'm just thinking that the first thing that someone's going to do is they're immediately going to run outside and just tackle the nearest person. I don't know why.
Now, is it going to be like a beat the crap out of them tackle, or like an elated,
like a
drag you to the ground and hug it out tackle?
Kind of, yeah, that one. But
because I think individually, like person to person, everybody's going to be super nice. And like there's just going to be people going to be running down Broad Street high-fiving. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But there's also going to be people running down Broad Street lighting cars on fire and climbing telephone poles thinking they're Spider-Man all of a sudden.
Well,
So in a global scale, or a citywide scale, I think it's going to be chaotic.
here's
In an individualistic scale, I think it's going to be, everybody is going to be, waiters and waitresses' tips are going to be insane for the next couple of days if they win the Super Bowl. People are going to help give money to the poor like crazy. Tattoo shops are going to be flooded
with the date.
with Eagles Super Bowl tattoos. Churches may become packed with hallelujah to God, it finally happened.
Well, I have a sub-question.
Hospitals are going to be full. And everybody is going to be in there for alcohol poisoning.
I have a few questions after this one, but a sub-question of this. Do you think it's going to be worse if they win or if they make it there and they lose?
It'll be chaotically worse if they win.
You think so?
It'll be worse if they lose in a heart ripped out mindset. You're going to see a lot of people on February, and you got to remember, this is all caveat of them winning this weekend. They're not in the Super Bowl. They still have to win to get into the Super Bowl. And a win is not a foregone conclusion yet. But it could happen. You're going to see a lot of people on February 5th, which is the Monday after the Super Bowl, very, very dejected.
Drunk.
Well, if they win, very drunk.
It's either
And if they lose, sad and drunk.
for the pizza shop, it's either going to be incredibly busy or no one's going to be wanting to leave their house.
Oh no, you're going to be swamped on Super Bowl Sunday.
No, the day after.
Oh, the day you guys might close down. No, well, here's the thing. The parade will be on Tuesday.
If they win?
If they win the Super Bowl, the parade will be... It's usually 2 days after. Because you got to remember, the Super Bowl is in a neutral site, unlike the World Series, which is played in both teams' stadiums. And, every other championship, the Super Bowl is in one neutral site. And this year, the Super Bowl is in Minnesota.
Okay.
So you got to remember, the game's going to start... Minnesota's on Central Time, so the game starts at 6:43 or whatever weird... commercially driven time frame that the NFL indicates, which means it's really 5:43 in Minneapolis. So by the time that game's over, it's going to be 10:30 in Minneapolis. They're not going to fly back till the next day, so they're going to fly back Monday. The parade would be Tuesday. It's going to be utter chaos if they win the Super Bowl.
I mean, they're going to be up in the plane. They're like, okay, we're making our descent now.
And Philadelphia's on fire.
And it's all on fire. We can't...
I'm curious.
We can't seem to land the plane. There are drunken people completely surrounding the runway. I don't know if we're able to land because I might hit one.
My curiosity is, how exactly did they make the fire green? Everything is green on fire. Because somebody's going to figure it out.
Green fire?
Green fire.
And a spreadable green fire?
Yeah.
It's like Nickelodeon Gak turned into fire.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's going to be like Slime Time Live, except everything's on fire. And pretzels are just going to be raining from the sky.
Pretzels and cheese
Yeah,
sticks.
Philly soft pretzels and cheese
tasty
sticks.
cakes.
Yeah, people are just going to be throwing tasty cakes at each other.
It's going to be like the Rocky
People are
Horror...
going to be lighting Rocky statue on fire.
It's going to be like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, where people throw rice at the screen and shit. It's just going to be...
People are going to be throwing tasty cakes at each other.
But...
So, are we in agreement that individually, people will be super nice to each other? Holistically, it's going to be utter chaos.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I have a few questions.
Now, let me ask you something. Before you get to your questions, how long do you think your questions are going to take?
Not very long.
Because we could split it into 2 segments.
Not very long.
All right, well then, hit me with it.
So, I noticed this from you and from Dad and from a couple people I work with who are Eagles fans. You bleed green 90% of the time,
It's true.
but yet you have no faith in your team 100% of the time.
You are Fans of a team like this, who have never experienced the final glory. The Eagles, I'll give you a statistic that I was throwing out on at my place of work. I'll leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
Throw you a statistic that I was speaking about at my place of work. I'm 24 now, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the 6th time the Eagles have played in the NFC Championship game since I've been born. That means a quarter of my life I've spent watching the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. 4 of the first 5 times I finished the day in misery because they did not win the game. The other time, they lost in the Super Bowl. So we don't know. In 53, this is Super Bowl 50, what, 2, 51? Something like that. It's in the low 50s. It's above 50, it's under 55. Whatever Super Bowl it is. In those in that time frame, in the 50-plus years that the Super Bowl has been played, the Eagles have never hoisted the trophy at the end of the day. The Steelers have 6 times. The 49ers have 5 times. The Cowboys have 5 times.
The Patriots have
6 times. 5 times. Patriots have 5 times. The Packers have 4 times. The Bills have played in 4 in a row and lost all of them. That's an unbelievable statistic that probably will never be matched. But you've got to understand that Philadelphia fans have never been able to experience that final step. So Philadelphia fans are like Moses in the desert, just waiting around for 40 years. And then they finally get to the promised land, and God's like, nah, you're out.
Get to come in.
You're out. You disobeyed me one time.
Well,
so the reason as to why Philadelphia fans are so negative about the football team that they would die for, which, by the way, the football team that doesn't know you exist. Which is why I hate when people say the words "our" and "we" and "us" when they talk about the football team.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not employed by the football team. You don't play for the football team. If you died, not you personally because you don't really care, but a big Eagles fan died tomorrow.
Which statistically would
statistically is probably going to happen. There is going to be an Eagles fan that's going to die tomorrow.
Maybe today.
Probably an Eagles fan that's going to die today within the next hour.
Wait.
It's just statistically.
There we go.
Just statistically how it works. And there's going to be an Eagles fan that's going to die in the next 2 days that never experiences a Super Bowl. But this is my point. If you died tomorrow, are the Eagles going to be at your funeral?
Mm-mm.
No. You know why? Because they don't even know you exist.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why you don't get to say, are we and us? Because you're not a part of the team. To round out my point here, the Eagles have been staring at the gates a couple of times. They've been inside the gates
They're like the kid from Up looking in the window. Just can I come in, Mr. Wilson?
Yes, exactly. They've been outside the gate 6 times. 7. This will be the 7th time they've been outside the gate. Twice they were allowed inside the gate, but they were never allowed into the zoo. They never made it to the zoo. They stood at the ticket taker's office and said, we don't have enough money to get in. They watched the zoo from outside 7 times. They stood on the bus 46 times. Twice they were inside the ticket taker window. They've never been into the zoo.
Wonderful analogy there.
They need to get into the zoo. And that's why we are so negative about the team that we are so in love with. Because it's easier to be negative and say, well, see, I knew this was going to happen, than to be overtly positive and say, and get your hopes crushed. Get your heart ripped out again. It's like going back and dating the same girl that cheats on you time and time again, expecting her not to cheat on you this time.
Alright, so I have one more question, and this can be a short question because we're reaching 20 minutes on this segment.
Go ahead.
Why, when you know nothing will happen, Do you insist on yelling at the TV at the top of your lungs, trying to instruct the players how to play?
Because there is a... Let me put it to you this way. Have you ever heard of the term beer muscles?
No.
So beer muscles is said to be a term used for somebody who, when they start to drink, all of a sudden thinks they're a tough guy. You know what I'm talking about?
Okay.
You know those people that think they can fight anybody when they get drunk?
Yeah.
It's their way of letting off their steam. It's their way of thinking they're tough when in reality they're really not. When I yell at the TV, I have no control over what happens on the field, at Lincoln Financial Field or whatever away stadium they play at. When I yell at the TV, it's me playing armchair quarterback. It's me playing couch quarterback. Because when you are watching a game, oftentimes the angle that you're watching it at is, and I mean you've even seen this, you know the angle you're watching it at. It's at a downward angle. Because the cameras are up in the camera wells, which are midway up the stadium, to give you the best outward view of the field. So when I watch the game on TV, there are things that I can see develop or happen or whatever that maybe a player can't see on the field because you don't have that aerial vision. And two, it's my way of keeping my anger from exploding. Because if I tuckered all this down for years and years and years and never got to go to the zoo, which by the way is a great analogy and a terrible analogy at the same time, because personally I hate the zoo. But if I never got to go to the zoo, despite the fact of me on the bus ride 24 straight years. Or let's talk about maybe our father on the bus ride now on his 55th bus ride. And he never is able to go to the zoo. If you tuckered all that down for 55 years, you are going to explode one day. And not explode in a catch the ball. You're going to explode in a I'm driving my car off the Ben Franklin Bridge.
That seems a little excessive.
It sounds excessive, and it sounds extreme, but there are people...
I don't believe I would drive my car off a bridge if I couldn't beat the final boss in Kingdom Hearts.
No, I understand, but there are people who do not rationally think. When I'm yelling at the TV, when the Eagles game is over, if they lose, I'm pouty for the rest of the day. But when I get up on Monday, you know what I do? I go to work. You know why? Because it's my duty. There are people who personally take offense to Eagles' losses. And that is why we yell at the TV. That's why I yell at the TV. So I can feel like I'm a part of the game and not go berserk in the long run.
All right, then. That answered all of my questions.
Ooh, that's a lot of talking in 25 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I used to do this for an hour straight by myself. Shows I'm a little out of practice.
You're rusty.
Certainly am. But let's head to a commercial break. On the other side, we'll do one final segment. We'll do a little bit of a wrap-up segment. I don't know if Brandon's got his question ready or if that was his question.
No, I'm thinking of another question.
Oh, Brandon's got his question ready. So we're ready for Brandon's overtly stupid question as the Baron Banter rolls on and we wrap up this show. We will be back on the other side for one final segment. Hang with us. Welcome back into a third and final segment of Baron Banter. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today as we ramp this thing back up. It's been quite a while since we were able to do a consistent Baron Banter, and I think with the way that our schedules have kind of fallen into place a little bit, it seems like this day, Wednesday, will be good for podcasting or recording the podcast, and we'll get it out on our normal Friday like we normally do so you can digest it over your weekend of doing absolutely nothing. Because that's what I like to do on my weekends.
I have
Except
to work
I work
on my
weekends now. So I don't really have weekends. I just have days off.
I have one day off.
You have one day off. I generally get two.
On a Wednesday.
I generally get two, but yes, yeah, you have one day off on a Wednesday. But let's get into this final segment. Normally what we like to do in the final segment is have some fun, but because our second segment went a little long, plus the fact that I had a lot of fun talking about it, we're going to bag that segment for today. And we're going to finish things up with what is normally the third segment at the bottom of the hour, and that is Brandon's question of the day. Sometimes it is very intellectual. Sometimes it's about as stupid as Brandon trying to punch a frozen steak like he did the other day. True story.
Tyler was complimenting me on how I half the time sound incredibly intelligent, almost philosophical like, and then I went ahead and punched a steak.
Sometimes Brandon punches frozen steaks for no reason, because he wanted to see how frozen it actually was. This right there, that a prime example of why women live longer than men. Prime example number one. But anyway, Brandon, why don't you get to your question as we wrap today's show up?
So, obviously I had a long time to think of a question if we ever got back to doing a better banter. And I wanted to make it a good one. And
he came up with, what is your favorite color? Blue. The end. Good night, everybody.
So basically, I was mulling over last night and early this morning, and I finally came up with one. We as humans have a certain limit to our senses and how much we can take in at one point. And how much we can perceive our own universe. And I was thinking that to us, what if there is an entity or entities, what could be considered a god?
What?
So, what got me thinking on this?
And that's not a W-H-A-T what. That's a W-U-T what.
What got me thinking on this one was, like I said, we have limited senses. We can't even see all of our own universe or even our own planet. There are things hidden that only certain scientific conditions can reveal to us. So, say you take a being from the fifth dimension. They would have observation powers and things that they could do that we would possibly could consider godlike. Would they be considered a god? Maybe they know how to create life on their own. We can't. Is that considered godlike? What constitutes a god?
Well, God in the spectrum of what we know it today, whatever your God is considered, it's one of two things. It's either an unseen higher power that you entrust your faith into, or it's a mythological creature or a mythological person that has powers but really resided in the times of the Greeks and the Romans. So the beauty of being intellectual thinkers and having a language that is understandable by the people that are around you, whatever you speak, by the people that are around you, is you can share your ideas and your thoughts and your stories to each other. God in and of itself is what you make of God. It can be whatever you want it to be. It can be as little or as much as you want it to be. Now, if you go to the extreme of nothing whatsoever, well, then you're probably an atheist. Mm-hmm. If you go to the extreme of God is literally everything,
you're most likely a Republican.
You're most likely a crackpot. But there has to be a fine line, because you could say God is everything and have God be the center of your universe and not be crazy. It's when you start literally deciphering Bibles and burning people on the stake for not being religious. That's when you go crazy. So I don't mean to say those that make God their center are crazy. I'm talking about people that are actually crazy. But that's the beauty of being...
who hear God in their oatmeal.
What's the beauty of being intellectually free-thinking people is you can make God whatever you want to make God. You and I probably have a different definition of God, just like you and your friends have a different definition of God, and I and Joel Osteen have a different definition of God.
What would be your definition of God?
For me I'm all about here and now. I'm about in the moment.
Okay.
And I plan for the future, but I'm all about in the moment. I don't need a divine intervention. I don't need an assurance of an afterlife or a divine higher power to prove that my life has worth and my life has meaning. I go out and I live my life according to how I see being an upstanding citizen, a good friend, a good brother, a good son, a good boyfriend should be. I treat people with respect. I treat people with kindness. I treat people how, and it's the golden rule. I treat people how I want to be treated. You get taught that when you're 4 years old.
Yes.
I don't go out and spend money that I don't need to spend. I try to help the poor when I can, even if it's just my 13 cents that I got at Wawa today in my change. I gave it right back to the box. I don't know where that box goes. It could go to Wawa for all I know. They don't have a sign, I don't think, on it. But I assume it goes to charity somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I try to respect all people. I try to have an adult relationship with my girlfriend while not being disrespectful or crude to her. I don't need a divine power in my life.
Okay.
Some people do. Some people need it.
Some people find comfort in it.
Right. Some people have comfort. Some people have hope. Some people have a look to the future and an afterlife and some kind of spiritual divinity that you ascend to and become a celestial being or whatever you want to be after you die that is pure and is good and is all things right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's white and it's bright and you have halos, whatever you need it to be, that's fine. And until we die, I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong. And my thoughts could keep me out of heaven, if there's a heaven. I could be floating around in no man's land. But I don't believe that if I were to lead the best life that I could lead, that I need to go to a specific building to say specific things at a specific time in a specific order in order to be a good person.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, I don't need a divine intervention.
Okay. Now,
would I like to be wrong? Sure. Would I like to be if I'm wrong and I get to the gates of whatever afterlife there are and I say, I doubted you, I'm sorry, and they could say, well, that's okay, we accept everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love it.
Now,
but I don't know.
On a few of your points, I agree with you. Like, I don't believe that God or gods need to be worshipped, or they need constant prayer, or they need to have a jazzercise routine where you kneel, sit, stand, sit, stand, kneel, stand. You don't need that.
To the tune of music that was written 500 years ago.
You don't need that. But I also believe that there are a few things that can't just be explained by coincidence.
Such as?
Say, just take us on this rock right now. Now, I know there were, I believe, I've heard that there are obviously things that happen to give us the world we live in now.
This positioning.
But
in this solar system.
Yes, but what were the chances of all the things that
infinitesimally
needed to
small.
happen to give us the perfect environment for us to thrive?
Infinitesimally small. I don't disagree with you.
So there, I think.
But let me ask you this: the basis of life. What is the smallest life form that you can think of?
The cell.
Right.
A single cell being.
Percentage-wise of your body, how much is a cell? Infinitesimally small,
there
right?
There are more cells in the tip of my pinky than there are people on the planet.
Exactly. So it's infinitesimally small, the percentage of one cell in your body. Just like the percentage of us in the entire spectrum of life is infinitesimally small. Just like the percentage of us getting this exactly right is infinitesimally small. Why can't it all have just worked out?
It could have, but there are those...
Because you don't get to pick and choose. You don't get to pick and choose when religion is convenient for you over science. You either have to believe everything that is preached, or you have to believe science. You can pick and choose in your worship ability, sure, I've got no issue with that. But when it comes to creationism, you don't get to pick and choose the creation story that you feel fits your dialogue the best.
While you are correct on that, I'm not... It may sound like it. I'm not picking and choosing right now. I'm trying to find the words to describe what I'm thinking right now. Basically, what I'm trying to think of is when you take, like I said at the beginning, there could be a fifth dimensional being.
Sure.
And they could have looked down on our dimensional world and said, you know what? We are highly intelligent people. We learn string theory as toddlers. And they drop something down into our universe, which then erupts the Big Bang. Would they be considered God at that point? Because they then created the universe and life as we know it.
Probably.
But they aren't all-powerful, all-knowing. They would just be a fifth-dimensional being.
They'd be God-like, and they'd be viewed as gods. But, here's the thing. Do you know this to be an existence?
No, that's
why. Do you
why
know the Big Bang to be
faith.
in existence?
Well, yes.
There you go. That's all I need.
However, that's why it's faith. Science is seeing and believing.
Right, and that's my
Faith
point. Why do I need faith? In a world based on factuality and truth, why do I need faith to get by?
You don't need faith to get by.
Faith in what?
But it does help.
Faith in what?
Whatever you need.
Okay, so you mean to tell me that I could sit back and say, oh, God will provide for me. The higher being will provide for me. No, I got to go out and take it. If I sat on this couch and said, oh, God will provide me nourishment, God will provide me with water, God will provide me with money, I'd be dead in 4 days.
Well, there could be the argument of destiny, but that's another topic for another
day.
Totally another topic we need to do. However, I believe that when people say that God will provide for you, it's not just in that example, like you sit on the couch and then you just magically have a spoon of oatmeal appear and it feeds you and then you're nourished. It could be that a God has provided for you now, that you're sitting there, you're in a home with a roof.
I'm in a home with a roof because our mother went out and worked 5 days a week to provide said home with a roof and help us provide food.
She didn't need to keep us here.
You're right, because she chose to keep us here. We're both adults. She could kick us out if she wanted to. She chooses to keep us here because she's a good person and she doesn't want to see her son struggle. There's no indication that God has any kind of divinity over that. Or a God. It's an individual's choices to let us stay here. Because she could just as easily be a strict mother and say, well, you're paying rent now. Or you need to get out and get a job and get better jobs and get full-time gigs and go find your own place to live and find your own food and pay for your cable and your water and your internet and all that stuff and live on your own.
True.
I willingly went and did that for almost a year. And I came back, and she welcomed me right back in because she's a good person, not because she's fearful of God.
Now, side note to this topic at hand. Is the belief of any God that humans have thought of, has it led to more good or more bad in the world?
I think it's led to more bad in the world.
More bad?
Because
now there are obviously wars over which God.
Well, that's God. That's all that you need to justify it with.
However, there are plenty of people who do the right thing in the name of God.
I
Those
think
who
that
take
they
care
are
of the weak and the defenseless.
They are
like Mother Teresa or someone
overpowered
like that.
and outnumbered in the fact that there are multiple religions with multiple gods and multiple thought processes. You don't have to be a righteous person to be a good person. You don't have to be a God-fearing person to do the right thing. You do, however, have to be a God-fearing person to fight a war in the name of your God. Not in defense of land, not even in conquering of land that your country deems necessary. In defense of your God. Because, let me put it this way. The Pope didn't believe he was wrong when they went to go fight the Muslims in the Crusades. And Salah ad-Din didn't believe he was wrong when they went to go fight the Christians in the Crusades. Because they were fighting for their God. And it turned into a bloodbath. So what's the common ground? The common ground is for those to just be good people. And not worry about a God.
Well, I will agree on that.
I don't need it.
You don't need
some
a God
some
to be
people
a good
want
man.
it, and some people feel that they need it. I'm not one of them. I don't need it. We went to Catholic school for 12 years. Catholic school is meant to be a particular breeding ground for the next wave of adult Catholics.
It's an indoctrination
center. In 12 years of Catholic school, after I came out of Catholic school, I felt further away from the Catholic Church than I did when I started at 4 years old.
Is that perhaps because it was forced upon you?
It's because it was shoved down my throat for 12 years. And I will never step foot in a Catholic church again unless it's for a wedding or a funeral. Or a baptism. I will not go to a normal mass. Because I don't need it. And if there's a higher power that's just checked me off the list of heaven because of this topic, then I'll suffer the consequences. But I don't need it.
Alright.
And quite honestly, I don't want it.
Alright.
Is that real enough for you?
I'm glad to hear your thoughts on this. I have these kind of conversations with one of my friends. There's always one rule. You can never tell the other person that they're wrong.
If you have a differing opinion, you're not wrong.
No.
You just are differing opinion than me.
You think differently.
If you believe...
This is the one time I can say this. You're unique in that way.
If you believe in whatever you need to believe in to work, to live and thrive, that's fine. Go with what works for you. I'm just telling you what works for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's individualistic, good living.
All right, then. Well, I think that wraps up this segment.
And it wraps up this show. So as always, thanks so much for listening and watching. Next week we will try to get that live stream going so you can get a little bit of a sneak peek into Banter 2 days before it is podcasted on its normal Friday time slot. But for this episode, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, a comment, and a subscribe down below, and you can find us for all things Earl. All things Earl. There you go. So for my broadcast partner, Brandon Zulli, and the rest of the Earls here at Easy Mode Earls, thanks so much for joining in. I'm Tyler Zulli saying good night, good luck, have a good weekend.